Crime Book Club. I'm here tonight with the first half of our Cumbrian Noir panel, and I've been joined by Graham Smith and Martin Edwards. I'm going to pass over to the gents to say a little hello and introduction direct from them. Graham, while we've got you, fingers crossed technology holds up, could you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello, I'm Smith. I'm author of series Beth, who's just embarking on her earliest cases as a member of the Force Major investigation team working out of Carlton Hall at Penrith, which is pretty much halfway down the M6 in Cumbria. Really glad to be here. Had a lot of support from UKCBC members in the past, and really excited to have this talk and, you know, again, share a virtual stage with Martin Edwards, who's a wonderful writer. So over to you, Martin.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks, Graham. Yes, well, my name's Martin Edwards. I've been around quite a long time, so I've written a number of different series. First one was set in Liverpool. The most recent one is historical. It's set in 1930, and a new book came out just 3 weeks ago, and that book is called Mortmain Hall. Cover, and it's not set in Cumbria, but the protagonist Rachel Savanate was born there, and so you can see I'm setting things up for future instalments. But I guess my rationale for being on this lovely panel is that I've written a series of books set in the Lake District. There are 7 of them, starting with the Coffin Trail, and last weekend I finished the first draft of book number 8, which is called The Corruption.
Oh, brilliant. Lovely. Well, I was going to say that would lead me quite nicely into saying, you know, lockdown, probably I've been hearing from lots of authors, it hasn't really changed many writers and authors' lives, and maybe just got a few more distractions with more people in the house. So has lockdown affected you guys in any way? You just hinted, Martin, that you had a book come out just as this happened, or while this has happened. But are you working on anything at the moment? Is there anything you'd like to tell our viewers about that's in the pipeline for you both?
Yes. Well, for me, lockdown's been a strange experience that it has for everyone, because this was a year when I had an enormous number of events lined up, more than ever before in my career, and of course they've all gone. But I was worrying about meeting various deadlines, including for the Lake District book. So I've motored on with that, and I've found it quite easy to write, because in my career I've had another job, so I've been working around the job for most of the time. So having the luxury of time has been great. So I've been working on that book. I've been finishing off the book about the art and craft of crime writing by members of the Detection Club, from Ian Rankin to Len Dayton, from Val McDermid to Agatha Christie. But that's been delayed. Publication has been delayed until September. And I'm also working on a book about the history of crime fiction before the next one.
Yeah.
Thank heavens for lockdown to give you time to do all of that, Martin.
Right, yeah. As I say, I was worried until it all started. I'd never get it done.
It's worked in your favour. What about you, Graham? Has lockdown helped you?
It has to a degree. I've actually taken probably 2/3 of the current lockdown I've spent watching the box sets that I've never watched because I've been busy working or writing.
Yeah.
One thing I have done is I've just done the final proof edits on my next release, which is called First Shot. That comes 4th of June.
Oh, lovely.
I received the edits back for the book that follows that over the weekend, so I've now got the big structural edits on them to do, and I have a green light on an outline from my agent. So once I've got these edits done, I'll be able to start a whole new piece of work and actually start hitting the keyboard hard again, which is something I've been looking forward to.
Oh, lovely. Brilliant. Well, it certainly sounds like you've both still got lots to be getting on with, and there's going to be some exciting releases coming up for everyone to read. Graham, I know our group founder, David Gilchrist, was wondering, will we be seeing more of Beth Young?
I hope so one day. At the moment, I'm doing the new series. I'm writing as John Ryder about a character, Grant Fletcher. And Fletcher's the kind of character that trouble doesn't need a GPS to find. He is one of these Reacher-esque characters that gets himself involved in all kind of situations, and he'll use his fists and his brain in equal measure to solve the problem.
All right. Well, he sounds like an interesting character. I shall look forward to meeting him then.
Yeah, he's great fun to write because he can do it all. He doesn't have to abide by any rules.
Yeah. Oh, there's a certain freedom in that, I should think, then, isn't there?
Oh, there definitely is. Definitely.
Lovely. But we are here as part of the Cumbrian Noir panel. So maybe you could tell our viewers why Cumbria is important to you, or why you chose to set certain books in Cumbria. Is it an area you're very familiar with? Fill our viewers and readers in.
Yeah, Cumbria is an area that I live 3 miles away from. I generally do most of my shopping, etc., in Carlisle, which is the big city that Cumbria has. And it's not even a big city by real standards.
Yeah.
But the beauty of Cumbria for a crime writer is you've got such a varied landscape. You have woods, you have the obvious lakes, you've got the Cumbrian fells. Over towards the more easterly side, you've got the wild moors out towards Alston and so on. You've got at least 100 miles of coastline of varying degrees, from salt marshes and so on, right round to the more cliffy kind of areas, fully on the west coast of Cumbria. You've got tiny little hamlets in out-of-the-way places. You've got towns. You've got rivalries between towns. There's just so much scope and so many places to hide a dead body.
It certainly sounds like it, Graham. Is that a similar draw for you, Martin?
Yes, it is. I live in Cheshire, and so I'm about an hour plus drive up the M6 away from Cumbria. But I had a publisher probably about 15 years ago, who wanted me to write a new series, commission a new series. And because it's a place I've always loved and I know pretty well, I pitched the idea of the Lake District series. And that's how the first book, The Coffin Trail, came along. But it was always intended to be a series. I'd written urban books set in Liverpool previously, and the idea of a rural series was a fresh challenge. And as Graham rightly says, the sheer variety in terms of the different communities, the different landscapes, types of landscapes, the literary heritage as well. So each book in my series is set in a different part of the lakes. They're cold case series, and the idea was to have a developing relationship between the two key characters. There's a female cop, Hannah Scarlett, who's in charge of the cold cases in Cumbria, and there's a historian called Daniel Kind, who's escaping to the lakes to get away from bad stuff in his past. So the idea of the series was to very, very slowly bring them together, and that's what I've been working on ever since.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful. We've had a question come in, gents. So seeing as it's there, I'm going to ask you. And it's from a fellow author, Valerie Keogh. And Valerie would like to know, what is your weirdest experience as a writer?
Graham, over to you.
I could tell neither of you were jumping to answer that one.
I once got thrown out of a church while doing research.
Oh, what were you doing in the church that warranted throwing you out?
It was for my second novel, I Know Your Secret. Again, a different series, but set in Cumbria, featuring D.I. Harry Evans. And I decided that I was going to open the book with a dead body in a church. So I thought, I know the church I want to use. I'm just going to go in and have a wee wander around. And when I was doing that, I got talking to someone. She said, I want to use this as a setting for my novel. I didn't mention the dead body because I had that much sense. As we got talking, the guy I was speaking to was very helpful and everything, and he took me through and he showed me all the back end side of it, and it was great long areas of chests of drawers with just thin drawers like that, and they were all marked up vestments and sacraments and all these other things. Really interesting. I turned round and I seen a safe. Now, this is not just your ordinary safe. This is 4 foot square and 8 foot high. And stupidly, without even thinking for a moment, I said, "Oh, what do you keep in there?" And that was it. I was politely ushered out. This is on up. I explained, I was thinking parish records, although it was a large church in Carlisle, I didn't lecture in such a safe. That was
some of that.
My before. Oh,
no, Graham's gone a little bit there. Sorry, Graham, you sound funny. Martin, what about yours? What's your weirdest experience?
I suppose in a way, I mean, I've had many happy experiences really as a writer, but sometimes they are strange. And I a few years ago, I was invited to a festival in the Middle East, literary festival, and I went there with a guy from the British Library because I'm involved with the British Library Crime Classics, and we went on a trip to Sharjah. And we're looking around there just as tourists, and I saw this strange piece of wood in the middle of an open area, and went up to have a look at it, and it had an explanatory notice saying it's called the repentance wood. And it's one of those rare moments where a story came to me just inspired by that site and that setting, and the term repentance wood. And so I got a story out of it. So that was an added bonus. So that was a bit strange, and I think the weird things are often happy but surreal experiences that tend to come along as a writer. You sort of come across story ideas or something like that in completely unexpected circumstances. Of course, that's part of the joy of being a writer. There are ideas and story possibilities everywhere. Everything you do.
Yeah. Do you find that too, Graham? No, I think we might have lost Graham for a moment. He's frozen. We'll move on to another question, Martin. Well, hopefully, Graham, if you need to log out and log back in, do what you need to do. But we've had a question come in from group member Mike Hemming. And Mike is wondering, what are your views on prologues? So this is getting into the nitty-gritty of your writing.
Yes,
Cumbria a bit now, writing stuff.
I have an editor in the States who doesn't like prologues at all. So sometimes we have to have a discussion about that. I think that if they fit the story, they're not just an artificial way of getting a bit of excitement before 50 boring pages, then it's fine. But the prologue, like everything else in the book, has to be justified. It has to earn its place, not just be the same old. And in Mortmain Hall, I did something different, which appealed to me. It's a book which is in many ways a kind of love letter to the golden age of detective fiction, and it begins, as one or two golden age books do, with an epilogue. And I really like that idea. So right at the start of the story, you get an epilogue which tells you something that happens right at the end of the story. But so that's quite an unusual way of drawing the reader in. But for that particular book, I felt it worked.
Excellent. Graham, are you still with us, my dear? No. He seems to be freezing. Oh, we've got a bit of movement.
Bit of movement there. Yeah. Hello, Graham.
Live. That would be a coup for our first ever festival, wouldn't it? Oh my goodness. Thank heavens you're all right, Graham. Did you hear the question okay, Graham? It was a group member, Mike Hemming, was asking what are your views on prologues? No, I'm afraid we've lost you again, Graham. Do you want to try logging out and come back to us? And Martin and I'll have a little bit of a chit chat if you want to do that.
I'm okay. I'm back
Oh,
now.
you're okay.
Oh, she's back.
I'm back.
I'm back. Oh, and we've got Matt's come to join us as well. He was waiting in the wings.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Everyone watching. This is Matt Hilton, who's come to join us a little early. He's had his tea. He's had his tea and he was waiting there, so we thought we might as well pull him in. We're not sure that we'll be able to get Mike Craven as well. We've had problems with 4, so bear with us, folks. Don't worry, Mike will be joining us in due course.
I'll just be for the meantime.
So, Graham, I think you just about managed to answer the question there. Matt, if you're interested in answering it, the question from Mike Hemming was, what are your views on prologues?
Yeah, I've used prologues in certain one of my books. I know it's a contentious issue with some readers. I've heard some readers say they don't even read them, but I like them as a prelude to stories sometime, maybe a hint at some action later on in the novel. So it is a device that I've used in various books in the past.
Yeah, excellent. And just because you're catching up, and we've done a little bit of the hellos and introductions, would you just like to give everyone a quick introduction and tell them a little bit, if you've got any book props, pop them up so that people can see your titles, Matt?
Sure thing. I live in Cumbria, born in Scotland though, so you might hear a strange accent. I'm the author of the Joe Hunter thriller series primarily, of which there's 12 books to date. And I also write a second series featuring a detective called Tess Gray and her partner who's called Paul Villaire. What I also do, though, is because I'm greedy, is I also write in other genres. So, I'm not unknown to swap about and write something as a horror book or, as a straight thriller, as a standalone. Book, I'm often asked, I used to be a copper in Cumbria, and a lot of people said, well, why do you write setting your novels primarily in America? But I do write a series set in Cumbria as well, and this is the first of that series. It's called Dark. It's about an inspector called Kerry Dark, and it's a crossover, bit of supernatural element to it as well. So it's gritty and gothic, and I found Cumbria is ideal for the locations.
Yeah,
so that's that one.
Brilliant.
That's the latest in my Tess and Poe series.
Fantastic.
Around Maine,
Rough Justice.
And one of my Joe Hunter thrillers as well. Similar vein as Jack Reacher-esque, similar to what Graham was saying a moment ago about his Graham Fletcher books. It's that kind of more thriller-led action, thriller, crime fiction.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Matt. Oh, gosh, well, we've got a lot of genres going on with Matt. And Graham, you're venturing off into the more thriller side with your new novel, First Shot, as John Ryder writing. Martin, are you sticking to crime? Do you want to go thriller? Do you want to go romance? Do you want to go horror? Is there anything you're itching to read?
When I was a small boy, it is quite true, I had the ambition of writing detective novels, and it took me a long time to get there, so I'm pretty happy to stick with crime and detection. So many different types of crime fiction, and also non-fiction as well. But I've written a few short stories, sci-fi or supernatural, but crime is really what still excites me as much as it ever did when I had that dream as a boy.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Well, we've had another question come in. Unfortunately, I'm having trouble trying to track it down on my laptop to find who asked the question. So apologies, group member. I don't have your name at the moment. But you have been asked, with so many beautiful settings to choose from, which has been your favourite that you have used? Who would like to go first? Graham, while we've got you, you're moving and I can hear you. Let's go for it.
Got me. I say like in a sleep village called Talking, which is on the eastern reaches of Cumbria, out near Brampton.
Right.
With that, Torquay is one of these villages that there's a road bisects it, and there's maybe 40, perhaps 50 houses.
Uh-huh.
And half of the village is an area of outstanding beauty, and the other half is just a picturesque village, because the demarcation of the area of outstanding national beauty road. I was to the talk for and me.
Struggling to hear you again, Graham. Sorry, the sound keeps going. Sorry, viewers. Wiz, you've gone again for the moment, Graham. We're only getting bits and pieces. So sorry. Matt, would you like to answer that question? Which has been your favourite setting that you've used?
Sure thing. I've used loads of settings all over the United States, to be honest, in the other books. But if we're talking primarily about Cumbria, I chose to set dark between urban London and rural Cumbria, so that you got that kind of juxtaposition and opposites in the drama. I also went a bit off the beaten track. Rather than going to any of the beauty spots in Cumbria, I've chosen to use a place called, it's known locally as Baccaskiddaw or Baccaskiddaw. And it's just kind of, it's one of the highest points in Cumbria. It's moorland as opposed to beautiful fellland and stuff, but quite desolate in the winter. Beautiful in the summer, but quite desolate in the winter. And it suited the narrative of the story. And I invented an old manor house at a place there. So if anybody goes looking for Brandreth House, they won't find it because it's all come out of my head, But the actual landscape it's at is actually a real place. And I have a weird eye for beauty. I do a bit painting on the side, so I see beauty in other things as well. So I could see how that area just fit me nicely for that story.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Thanks for that, Matt. Martin, what about you? I found out that the question came from our admin team member, Samantha Brownlee. So Samantha was asking the question. Got to give her credit.
Yes, well, thanks for that question, Samantha. In my case, each of the Lake District mysteries is set in a different part of the lakes, and each of them has been set in a place I found very appealing, both to visit, to research, but also to write about. But I think my absolute favourite so far has been the setting of the Dungeon House, which is the most recent published book, the seventh one, and that's set on the west coast, around Ravenglass, the beaches of Drigg, which I found very fascinating indeed to spend a few days touring around there and staying there, and pretty atmospheric part of Cumbria. Even by the county's high standards. And that was a book that I really enjoyed writing. The cold case in that story is one that goes back 20 years. So there isn't as much a prologue as 4 early chapters deal with what happened 20 years ago. And it appears to be a straightforward open and shut case of a murder. And then you move to the present day, still in Ravenglass and the vicinity, and things start to look a bit different when a connected crime takes place. And so Hannah Scarlett has to look into it and try and figure out what's going on and what the connections are between the dark secrets of the past on the west coast and what's happening in the present. So that's the Dungeon House, and that's probably my personal favourite in the series.
Lovely. Well, I found a question here from Pauline Render Byron, and it links in nicely because Pauline has asked, when you're out and about, obviously you have this beautiful scenery, do you take photos for inspiration? I mean, Matt, you might be different with your painting. It might just log itself in there. I don't know. But do any of you take photos if you see that perfect spot, whether it's an inspiration, if it's somewhere else, even in the UK? Do you take it and use it later?
Yes, I do, because I'm really a words person. I'm not got a terribly visual mind, but the visual side of the books, the Lake District series, is really important. So I find that taking photographs, which I can go back to, is very helpful to fix things in my mind, and that's been especially the case recently, because when I've been working on The Crooked Shore, it's a book I've been fitting in around other projects until recently. And so the photos I've taken have helped me to fix the location in mind. And that's a story set on the edge of Morecambe Bay with so it's South Cumbria. It's not too far from Ulverston. And of course, it's an area where you've got the quicksands as well. Suffice to say that they play a part in the story.
Oh, sounds exciting, Martin. Thank you. Graham, do you take photos? I'm hoping we can hear you.
I think we'll Graham for a second.
No. Matt, sorry, Graham, if you can hear me, but we can't hear you, I'm afraid. Oh, are you back?
Hello, am I back?
Hello, Graham.
Hello.
Hello,
Sorry about
did you
that.
hear? That's all right. We know you've been having problems. We are nearing the end of our time of our first half. So the question was, do you take photos when you're out and about, Graham?
I do when I'm doing research trips, because I'm at the age where my memory doesn't work as well as I want it to. So I take lots of those, just to capture what I'm seeing, just to act as memory joggers. Yeah. It's just an aid for me, and then I can look back and think, yeah, there was this, was there a tree there, and so on. Just all the little bits and pieces that I might need to factor in somewhere. When you look for,
no,
you know, for the site in Death Weeks, I look back, it wasn't good.
Right.
Oh.
Graham, I'm afraid you're breaking up terribly again, and I'm conscious. And I feel so bad for you, and we are running out of time for this first half too. I'm going to ask one last question that's going to come in, and it's another question from fellow author Valerie Keogh. She's asking for new readers, which book of yours would you recommend to start with? So that's a good one for everyone watching this evening. Which one would you most like people to get into? First of all, give them a taste. Martin.
Well, if I were choosing of all my books, then the book that has been absolutely the most fun of all to write was the most recent one, Mortmain Hall. So that's probably my number one of all time. But within the Lake District series, although there's a sequence, you can read them in any order. The Coffin Trail, the first book, did very well. But as I say, I like the Dungeon House. So that's probably my personal favourite of the series.
Okay, Matt, what about you?
Yeah, with my Joe Hunter series, that's the one I'm most best known for, I should say.
Right.
First book was called Dead Men's Dust. It gets the series going. It's an introduction to the character and gets Joe, who's a Brit, by the way, gets him across to America on the hunt for his missing brother, where they both fall under the interest of a serial killer. So it's that kind of chase thriller. If people enjoy that kind of book, I'd say that one. With Tessa Moore, which is slightly more mystery, Blood Tracks is the first in the series. And again, like I said, I've just started a new series with Dark, so they can start at the first one if they enjoy that one. Being really clever, I'm thinking it as a trilogy as Dark, Darker and Darkest. But, I found it Sesame Street, so we'll see.
Interesting angle on Sesame Street, man. Not sure which version you've been watching there.
Yeah, the adult version.
We're not after 9, Matt. Behave yourself. Unfortunately, viewers, we have lost Graham. He has had awful technical problems. He is in the wilds of Gretna Green, in that area, and unfortunately, we have lost him. So I am so sorry to anyone who's out there and was particularly keen to hear Graham answer questions. Really sorry about that. We've reached our end of our first half an hour. Martin, I have got to say it's been an absolute pleasure. And for anyone watching at home who didn't know, we are very honoured to be in the presence of this year's CWA Diamond Dagger Award winner, Mr. Martin Edwards. Well done, Martin.
On that note, thanks so much for inviting me. It's been great to take part, and I look forward to the rest of the show. Thanks again.
Thanks ever so much, Martin. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Right, folks, we are going to do a little bit of a changeover. Caroline's working her magic, and we have now been joined by Mr. M.W., known as Mike Craven. Good evening, Mike. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Matt.
Hello, Mike.
Well, I don't know how much of an introduction our viewers will need to you, Mike, but now that you're here and everyone else has done it, would you like to give everyone a little intro to yourself and your writing?
Yeah, first of all, I will say that is not me. I'm Mike Craven, writing under M.W. Craven at the minute. I'm the author of the Washington Poe series, which started with The Puppet Show, Black Summer, which is out now. It's 99p now if you want to just dive into the series, right in the middle, which it is the middle, and The Curator, which is out in a month and a day. And I've had a lot of support from the UK Crime Book Club, which has been absolutely lovely, flattering and a little bit scary actually, because when you get a lot of attention, the pressure on you for the next one, it seems to be raised. It probably isn't raised. It's probably Matt will talk about this because he's been at this a long time. Your next book is always the one that you're going to be judged on. So I'm here to be judged.
You've got a lot of friends, both of you, in UK Crime Book Club. So we are absolutely
it's just not in real life.
I don't know about that though, Mike. Careful what you wish for. Careful what you wish for. We covered a question earlier, Mike, which would be of interest to ask you, is about, because you are on the Cumbrian Noir panel. I've not had that much wine, honestly. What is it that is so important to you about Cumbria? Is it in your veins? Is it in your blood? Why write your books there? Because not everyone writes where they live.
No,
I mean, it may seem a daft question, but
I was listening to Graham's answer, which I thought was very good. I think he missed out a couple of key areas, which Matt will probably understand better than Graham, actually, simply because he's worked on that thing. And that is, although Cumbria has all the natural beauty that you come to expect, the mountains, the fells, the lakes, the beautiful villages. There's also a hidden side to Cumbria, which a lot of people don't realise, and that is there's a lot of deprivation.
There is.
right.
There's parts of Cumbria that are poorer than Tower Hamlets in London, that have a lower GDP than the Czech Republic. And as a probation officer, I was going on to these estates. Now, you'll have seen these estates on TV. You'll have seen deprived estates on the TV, but you might not have seen deprived estates like Cumbria because it's so rural. So these deprived estates are like because they're not surrounded by others. They don't bleed into each other, basically. So they are little islands of surrounded by miles of countryside. So you go into so they are sort of ruled by the gangs and the crime families and things. It's a very it's a hidden. The tourist board don't advertise it. I go into it a bit in the food books, particularly the first one. But the other side to it is there's a lot of heavy industry in Cumbria, too, in particular. The Sellafields nuclear facility, which is worldwide, and I touched on in one of my books, Body Breaker, and BAE, who do the submarines. Now, what you get with that, and I'll promise I'll finish soon, Matt, is you get a two-tier economy. You get people who are next door neighbours, and one might be on 50 grand a year. At Sellafield, when I was a probation officer, been at university for a good couple of years, I'd qualified for a couple of years, so I was on a decent salary, and there was labourers coming in on 20 grand a year more than I was because the inflated salary. So you get these families living side by some in abject poverty, some with 2 Porsches on the drive and things like that. So it really is a fascinating county. And also, I'm bone idle. I've got to be honest. I'm bone idle. I couldn't be bothered to travel, so almost every scene in the books up until the creator, I'd already been to the places, so I didn't have to research them or anything. So if I could write a book series set in my back garden, I would. My editor says I'm not allowed to, though. But.
That's a shame. Well, I mean, Matt, you've as you said earlier, you've written books set in different sort of genres and different places now as well. So what are your views? Obviously, Mike considers himself lazy. Are you happy to go out there and do the legwork if it's getting on a plane and jetting off to Fiji, as was mentioned the other night? Or
that'd be nice.
It would, wouldn't it?
Fiji and put it down to expenses. That'd
exactly.
be good. Yeah, believe it or not, the first book that I was published with Dead Men's Dust, I actually set it in America without having ever been there before.
Oh,
really,
gosh.
It was all from my imagination.
Yeah.
From what I'd learned from reading books. I read a lot of American books that were coming into the country at the time, and TV. So I had this preconceived idea of what America was like, and thankfully I got away with it. You know, I didn't make too many mistakes. I kept it kind of Hollywood enough that it had passed. But once I was published, particularly when I got published in America, American publisher also picked up the books. I thought I better get across here. But the big surprise to me was, particularly on the eastern seaboard, is they're not very different than us. The eastern seaboard, they're very similar to us as people. But I think for the case of research, I research as I go. I use a lot of Google Earth and stuff like that. But there's nothing like getting your feet on the ground in a location, because then you get a sense of the place, not just an image of it. You get a sense of the place, like the smells and the local flavour. And how people speak and things like that. So I find it's important for that. I've been to America quite a lot in the last 12 years. But I'm like Mike, I'm lazy. You know, most of the time I like to be sat at my desk writing. So the travel's kind of like part of the bigger bundle, where I'm quite happy when I'm at my desk and I'm thinking about places. So it's a strange catch-22.
So what's the most challenging piece of research then that you've had to carry out for any of your books? Whether it's taken you out of your comfort zone, whether that's literally out your house and going somewhere, or just, is there some subject? What has challenged you the most whilst writing your books?
Should I go first, Mike?
Yeah, go on.
Because of my Hunter books are kind of them action thrillers. There's gunplay involved. And as you know, we don't use guns in the UK so very much. I'd probably shot shotguns and pellet rifles and things like that, but I had to learn my way around, the military weapons, particularly that was used in America. And lo and behold, if you think you've got it right, you haven't, because you'll have 100 gun nuts will be on, they'll email you to tell you how very wrong you are. I once made it was just a line in a book where I just described a helicopter coming round, and I said it looped back, and some expert sent me a 3-page treatise on how a helicopter couldn't loop the loop unless it was Airwolf. So you get things like that all the time. But,
Airwolf, miss that.
I tried to drip feed just enough information to sound like I know what I'm talking about now, and leave the rest out. Yeah.
Fair enough. What about you, Mike? What have you managed to think up there then?
I think challenging for me was probably the solution to the problem in Black Summer, and that's because I didn't have the solution when I gave the problem of how can someone come back to life. I was just relying on being able to find something, and I couldn't, to be honest. I didn't have a clue how I could actually do this, but luckily my niece Katie was in her second year at Oxford doing bioengineering or some useless degree. Sorry, Katie, if you're watching. Although she's probably going to be earning 7 times what I've. And she took the problem and they played about with it, and then she took it to her professors and things, and eventually they had this solution which they said theoretically would work. Then I sort of took some of the rough edges off, and so yeah, that was just me trusting that there would be an answer out there. But so the research wasn't actually done by me in the end; it was just me posing a sort of problem to people with brains far bigger than mine.
Thank you very much. It can't go unnoticed, Mike, that you have brought Iron Maiden to the group tonight. So, and we do know that you are a bit of a Maiden as well as a punk fan as well.
Punk, yes, yeah.
But we have had some questions come in relating to Iron Maiden. So let's deal with those. We've had, let's see, Pauline Brenda Byron has asked, we know Mike is a bit of an Iron Maiden fan. But have any of you been tempted to sneak a favourite lyric into your work, or have you already done it? And Matt, you can answer that one too, whether you're a Maiden fan or not.
Yeah, I know nothing about Maiden, but I know about music.
We'll go to the next gig together, Matt.
Yeah.
We'll stand at the front.
I've still got my 1980s retro rockabilly hairstyle, partly. No, so I come from a different school of music, but yeah, I've dropped lyrics into quite a number of my books. You know, I even shoehorned Doris Day in one time, which took a bit of doing, but there we go. You know, yeah.
I mean, they sort of put your sort of lawyer's head on. You're not allowed to unless you got permission.
That's true.
The copyright infringement, and you can be sued massive amounts of money. I mean, you're talking like 30, 40 grand. You can, because titles can't be copyrighted. So I could say Poe was listening to Number of the Beast. Or, actually, Poe doesn't like Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Which is why we wouldn't get on if we actually met. But you couldn't have him singing along to Number of the Beast.
That's right.
Or you could say he was singing along, but you couldn't actually have him
quote the lyrics.
Quoting the lyrics. I think it was in either the 3rd book or the 4th book, where I quoted a poem. I can't remember who. There'll be people coming up in the writing stream will know. And is there honey still for tea is one of the things. And my editor says you can't use that unless you got permission from the Blake estate. I think he said actually from the Blake estate. And that poem is like hundreds of years old, I think. So they take it very seriously. And if there's any queries, they send it off to the legal department. So you're quite well protected by there. But I know authors who will put a quote, they'll put a lyric quote at the front of the book, and I'm thinking, why would you take that risk?
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for that, both of you. But it links in. There was a question from group member Lee Chopping, and it was for you, Mike, saying, do you think that Tilly Bradshaw could be a closet Iron Maiden fan? And if so, which album best reflects her personality? That's a good question, Lee. I like that one. As a bit of a Maiden fan myself. Sorry, folks at home. Sorry, Matt.
I think Tilly would find it very frivolous and rather stupid, quite frankly. I've never put any thought to it. I suppose it'll be one of the futuristic ones. Maybe The Final Frontier, because that one had a sort of space theme going on, or Future Real or something. That's a question I've never been asked before. So, well done.
It's a good one. You know, I must admit, I kind of have a track in my mind whenever I think or read of your books, Mike, and that is Maiden's Run to the Hills.
All right.
Because it just seems to.
I'll not take that as an insult.
That's my 2 penneth worth anyway. We've had a question come in, guys, although I have got some here, obviously you've seen already. We've been asked to ask you, where do you get the ideas for the crimes committed in your books? Because obviously some get quite gruesome. So what goes on in those minds of yours? Where do you get the inspiration from for those crimes?
I think inspiration comes from everywhere, really, doesn't it? It's what you know and what you've heard, and you know what you see on the news. I like to kind of choose crimes, that's possibly been happened and real, but then change them slightly for my own purposes. I once read this fascinating, it was fascinating to me, where a sheriff was blackmailed because it was kind of set up for a crime by taking a drawer out of his desk and putting it into the desk at the murder scene, because there was, it was kind of like how all offices have the same kind of furniture. And they took the drawer out of his desk and placed it in the drawer at the murder scene, and then put the other one back at his desk, so his fingerprints were on the scene. And I thought that was fascinating. That
Wow.
simple as that could happen. So I wove that into one of the Joe Hunter stories. So just little things like that. You come across snippets and you think, I could maybe use that in future.
Yeah.
So,
is that similar for you, Mike, as well?
It is. I don't dwell too much on the actual the gory bit, although I mean people do think my books are gory, but if you actually go back and actually analyze them, a lot of it is after the fact. It's quite a sort of scientific view of the crime. Albeit the first Poe book, you did actually have someone being burnt to death from the victim's point of view. But I blame my agent for that, because initially I didn't have that. I had a 32-page introduction with two people telling each other a joke. This is absolutely true. My agent said, "Can you just burn someone alive in the first page?" So, which is what I did. But otherwise, it's a crime book, so you've got to have a crime, and the sort of series that I'm sort of locked into, they're not cozy crimes, they're not even nice crimes, they're not in the Chris Carter type thing.
No.
They're not at the extreme level, which and everyone has their own taste. And some people preferred the Puppet Show to Black Summer because the Puppet Show they perceived as gorier, whereas Black Summer is actually, I don't think there's any crimes really committed. I mean, I think every crime was committed like years after the book starts. And the creator starts with it's not really a spoiler because it's on the first page, someone getting their fingers chopped off.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like Matt. I mean, I read the paper every day and I watch the news every day, and
there's enough going on, isn't there?
There is, and normally you find it. Florida man did this. I mean, there's actually, if you put Florida man into Google and just follow the trail of wacky behaviour out there, the worst crimes tend to be done in the States anyway. I remember Lee Child said, actually, because Lee Child was asked, where'd you get ideas from? He said, well, whatever I think of, invariably in the States, someone's already done it.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah. Ah. Well, we'll move on to a slightly nicer bit. We've had a question from Mary O'Regan Ulmer. And I know we have a lot of audiobook fans in the group as well. So how do you choose a narrator for your audiobooks? And do you interview different people for it? Or is that all passed over to someone else?
For me, I was, they sort of emailed me, the audio department at Little Brown said, this fella, John Brown, is available. Here's some links to some work he's done. Can you either approve him or not? And there was a War of the Worlds thing. There was a Doctor Who thing. And he had a really, really posh voice, as in like really upper class. That's what he sounded to me. But I now know it was because he was narrating War of the Worlds. I thought it would be hilarious getting him to do a Poe accent and swearing, because the first Puppet Show, the first book, the Puppet Show, it was actually quite sweary. I'm cutting down the swearing. You might not actually notice, but I am. And I thought it'd be fun. Turns out he's from Yorkshire, so he didn't give a shit. And he's a nice bloke. He comes to my launches. He's a really nice fella. And he's actually useful because he actually gatekeeps. He basically is the last person to see it before it goes to print. And on a couple of occasions, he spotted little errors. On one occasion, he spotted a massive blunder, which was quite helpful, which we've all managed to fix in time. But so I was sort of asked to approve it, but I mean, I was just delighted that somebody was doing it, to be honest. And I can't listen to it. That's a weird thing. I can't listen to someone read my own work.
You're not the first author I've heard.
I've got about an hour in. I said, nah, this just feels a bit
strange. What about you, Matt? How do you go about choosing, or is it similar? Again, I don't know. Is this the same?
With my Joe Hunter books, it was kind of out of my hands. It was the publishers that arranged everything, so I didn't really have a say in it. However, I've come to know the narrator quite well through social media and that. Peter Noble, he does a smashing job. So he's my kind of go-to guy now anyway. You know, so I'm more than happy with Peter's work. And it's like, Mike, it's strange hearing somebody else read your work. With Joe Hunter, the character, I describe him as being from Manchester in England. So the first chap who narrated the very first book, he depicted him as sounding like, you know, like one of the Oasis guys or something, you know, who was all in it and you're right. And I think, no, that's not what Joe Hunter sounds like in my head. And Joe's partner in crime fighting, if you want, is called Jared Rington. He's an Asian American, but he had him sounding like Yosemite Sam off the cartoons. It was, and I was like, no, this isn't what I imagined at all. But like I said, Peter Noble, who narrates him now, does a smashing job. Sorry if I'm rattling on. With Dark, though, I was actually asked who I wanted to narrate it. That one, because I had a female lead character, I thought it was more important that I had a female narrator. And I'm ashamed now, off the top of my head, her names just went right out the top of my head. So I'll find it out.
Have a think.
And I'll have a think. But, have a think. I was sent various, you know, samples of different voices, and I was asked to choose which one I actually preferred, and I obviously chose this one. Went with it, and again, she done a superb job on it. And if I don't remember it in the meantime, I'll drop it in the comments or something.
That would be great. Yeah, that's good.
Because I'll just drop this in actually with my narrator, and I met him a few times. I start playing little tricks on them now, and I put so in the third book, The Creator, which I don't know if you read yet, Lucy, but there's a female FBI.
Not yet.
She's only just a drop-in character, really, and Poe speaks to her on the phone, and I described it. I thought this will be fun. I'll give her a southern. She's from Louisiana, so a really Southern American accent. I thought that'll challenge John. But because I've written book 4 as well now, and I thought I need an FBI agent just to drop in to actually be in the book, and I thought I'm going to put her in, so that he's actually doing a soppy American accent for half the book. That'll be absolutely hilarious. Like, he doesn't thank me. He's quite mean to me sometimes.
Well, that'd be something for our group member Alexander James Hawley to look out for. Alex has been doing some of the interviews. He's a big audiobook fan, so that's how he accesses his books. So I know he has great opinions on them. I've got to ask this. I'm sorry, Mike and Matt, if it's relevant to your books, chip in. We've got quite a few people wanting to know about Tilly and Poe and relationships. Are they possibly going to get it on, or is that just mustn't think it? Have you thought that far ahead?
I do ask this sometimes, and I think the honest answer is no. I don't think I will. I think it might actually spoil it a bit. Actually, they care for each other a lot, and I'm at the end of book 4 now. In fact, I'm halfway through book 5, and they are sort of inseparable. And I've got a series of short stories coming out in September, which I have already mentioned, where they're on holiday together, basically. Well, actually, they're in Cumbria, but they're having a couple of weeks off, and in that couple of weeks, they managed to solve 3 separate murders. One of them without actually leaving the house. So no, but Poe and relationships. For those of you who read Black Summer, there's a character called Estelle Doyle who's the pathologist. You might want to keep an eye on her. But don't. I mean, it'll be 2023 possibly. I mean, I don't know. But my agent did say you need to let Poe have sex every now and then. Because so we're 4 books down. He's had absolutely nothing. And I thought, anyway,
well, it's just we haven't been told about it yet.
There is a sex scene in The Creator, but it's not. It's a bit nasty.
So I was going to say, I mean, have you written sex scenes, Matt? I mean, without going into details, people, please don't worry, but you know, it's one of those, do you think there's a place for it in crime? And how do you feel about writing it if you do write it?
Off the page, yeah. They just go inside the room and close the door. Yeah, they say write what you know. You see, so you know. Do you know? Interestingly, you know, when I again going back to my first Joe Hunter novel, when I originally wrote it, he was married with 2 teenage kids, and my editor said no. You know, keep him single, keep him available, and
Yeah.
get rid of the kids because they're too much of a drag on him. So he ended up divorced with 2 dogs, you know. So when it went to print, so he's had
Yeah.
off and on relationships over the books. The other 2 characters, Tess and Poe, that are right, they're kind of like opposites attract. It's an ex-sheriff's deputy and an ex-criminal. But I had to give them a kind of love interest to make them care so much for each other that they'd fight for the lives for each other, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they're having this kind of long drawn out relationship at the moment. They've you know, they've got engaged, but I can see that lasting for a few years yet, or a few more books. You know, so it's
Why not?
it's just trying to keep people happy, keeping them all around happy.
I might give Tilly a boyfriend at some point. I think that might be quite.
That'd be interesting.
Quite a fun.
Yeah, that would be
device,
interesting. Yeah. That would, most definitely. Yeah, because he's got to be a special kind of guy. I think I can understand why people are asking about Poe with Tilly, because their relationship is so special, and you've done brilliantly creating that, Mike. You know, it's such a touching friendship, but just goes beyond it that little bit, which I guess is why people want to know. But
I think ultimately it's because they're both outsiders. Poe, because he's so misanthropic and antisocial, and because of what happened to him, and Tilly because she's just got an absurdly different brain to everyone else. So although they are polar opposites, they do have that one thing in common, which is, and that the friendship is the beating heart of the stories, and it's the thing that I really do enjoy writing the most. I mean, there's a scene in Poe 4 where Tilly's explaining the rules of Muggle Quidditch to Poe, and I've been trying to get this scene in like about 3 books, but it's been approved. It's
oh, brilliant!
You're getting it in
Muggle Quidditch. You heard it here first, folks. There's an exclusive from Mike for you. Well, we've had, like I say, that's covered a lot of questions. We've done the Iron Maiden bit. We've done the relationships. Who are your favourite authors? Whose writing sort of gives you the chills, gives you the thrills? What do you love when you're reading for pleasure?
Michael Connelly. He's by far my favourite crime writer. Chris Whitaker, he's probably my favourite British author at the minute, along with Mick Herron. And Carl Hiaasen, an American author who writes very, very funny books. But ultimately, if I had to name one author that, if I could only read one author again, it would be Terry Pratchett.
Okay.
No question. I read his books more than any other. I've reread his books more than any other author.
Excellent. What about you, Matt? Who does it for you?
I'm a Connolly fan as well, but John Connolly for me.
Right.
Charlie Parker series. I think he's an astounding writer, you know. Jack Curley, or Jay Curley, he's another one. Robert Cray, or Crace, depending on your accent. Jeff Deaver, people like that. And currently I'm going through a bit of a Stephen King catch-up. I forget how good Stephen King is until I go back to one of his books again.
He's excellent, isn't he? He's getting better and better, I think. His new books are just as good as his old books. I mean,
they seem to bring out mixed opinions. I've come to King later. I read Herbert when I was younger, and I think June McKee was where I started reading King as he released, and they blow me away. It's quite an imagination. So the things he comes up with.
I've been enjoying the Bill Hodges trilogy again and The Outsider, so really, really into them. But I read across other genres as well. I read horror and fantasy as well. Big fan of Robert E. Howard, who was one of the pioneers in the 1930s, right through. You know, I read a lot of books in the 70s from people like Don Pendleton and done the Mac Bolan series. These are all inspirations that have actually led me to be a writer these days. So I've got a lot of people that I pay a lot of respect and debt to. Yeah.
Excellent. Matt, you've got a a different book that's just come out, haven't you? And I have to say, my husband's reading it. He was desperately trying to finish it before tonight for some reason. Not quite sure why, but that means he's enjoying it. So give us a little plug for your new book. Give people a taster if they haven't already seen it in the group.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that it might not appeal to everybody here because it's a cross-genre book again, and it's my take on the superhero genre, where I wanted to write a superhero modern take, but set it in a thriller setting rather than a kind of comic book setting. Whether it works or not, I've had some good feedback from some readers. Won't be to everybody's cup of tea, but it's called Wildfire. It's a romp. It's an action-packed. You know, somebody described it as Doc Savage meets Indiana Jones. You know,
it'll be good because I've read a lot of Matt's works. There's Joe Hunter books, there's Tess and Poe, and The Dark, which I particularly love. Dark just gets set in Cumbria, so I've downloaded it. We had quite a discussion because I couldn't remember downloading it. I was complaining to Matt I couldn't find the link, and then suddenly it was just there on my Kindle. So I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to catching up on all of your books once we're done tonight, and I can relax, and I'm going to treat myself to your books. We are almost up at time. We've just got a few more minutes. We're sneaking a little extra sort of 5 minutes in for you two before William Shaw and Leslie Thompson join us at 7, folks. And I believe, Mike, there was something that you wanted to share with our group members tonight, something you've been saving exclusively.
I'm not supposed to say anything till tomorrow, but my marketing exec has allowed me to share it today, and that is there's going to be a free Tilly and Poe short story released on Friday, the 8th of May. So that'll be free. It'll be up to I don't know the details of how you're going to be able to do it yet, but it's going to be up between the 8th of May and the 21st of May, and then it'll be taken down, and that will be one of the 3 short stories that will be for sale towards the back end of the year. So it's well, I'm not gonna I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just read out the first paragraph. It's brilliant. It's very short, like 20 seconds short.
Oh, you're fine.
You can, I'm gonna be reading glasses on. I'm nearly 50.
That's why mine are on.
Forgive me.
Blurry without.
Right. I'm not sure we should trust a thermometer calibrated for a dog's rectum. That's what started it. 13 words. There was a pheasant too, of course, or maybe it was a peacock. And there was a smell. That might have been something in the fridge, but could have been coming from behind the fridge. That bit was never resolved. But mainly it was the words. 13 words. 13 unlucky words. Unlucky for Detective Sergeant Washington Poe. Much unluckier for someone else. So that's how it starts. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's. I'm not going to say anything else. It's just. But it's free, like I said, so go nuts on it.
Where will people be able to find that on Friday?
I think it'll be on the Crime Vault, but as soon as I've got links, everything, I'll share.
Oh, bless you! Thank you.
Across all my formats, and I'll give the UK Crime Book Club all the links, and I hope everyone enjoys it. Everyone who's read it so far has really enjoyed it. But
oh, that's great. Well, thank you ever so much for saving that to share with us, Mike. That was really great. You know, your fan base in the group's going to go through the roof, and Matt, yours too. And I hope we've helped Martin and Graham. We are coming up to the end of our time, just about. Is there anything else you guys want to share? Any other tidbits or anything exciting on the horizons for fans to watch out for? We've probably covered everything, but if there's anything that came to you, Matt, did you remember your narrator?
No.
Damn, that'll be in the comments.
But I forgot to mention, you know, if anybody does want to try out Blood Tracks first, the Tess and Poe series, it's actually running at 82p on Kindle at the moment. So if you haven't grabbed it, it's worth grabbing. I think it's been a glitch, but it's selling at 82 pence. So get it while you can, you know.
Really?
It's you know, it's worth it for that much, hopefully.
I'm sure it's worth it anyway. I've got to quote my husband. He's read them all. He loves your Joe Hunter books, Matt. So there's already a big fan in my household, and I hope to catch up with him. So
pass him my best regards again.
I will do. That's really kind of you. Thank you. And my dad's a big fan of yours, Mike. So
that's good. Thank you. Say hello to him.
The family in, and we're about there. So I am going to wind up just to make sure that we don't run over, and I'm going to say a huge thank you to you both. Matt, thanks for coming in a little earlier just to fill the gap with Graham. We were so sorry to lose Graham earlier on. We were really hoping that wasn't going to happen. So I'm sorry for anyone watching who missed out on Graham. But Mike, thank you too for joining us and for giving us that exclusive. You're a star. We love seeing you all in the book club. Come and chat to your fans. Come and get involved. We love seeing you there, and keep writing, guys.
Thanks very much, Lucy.
Cheers, Lucy.
Thanks ever so much to you both. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
All right.